Good evening. I'm Isaac BenEzra, host and co-producer of Conversations. It's nice to be with Chris Hoffman, who is one of the three candidates for Board of Trustees at the library. The election is taking place on March 29th, and I have had the opportunity and pleasure to interview all three candidates. There are two positions. So stay tuned, and each one of the candidates will have this opportunity to spend a half hour with a conversation on Conversations, and then we'll bring all three candidate tapes together a week or so before the election, and that'll give you an update. So it's just good to see you again. Another handshake.
Another handshake.
Okay, you relaxed?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. Chris, you've been on the Board of Trustees for 3 years, and now you're coming up for another 3-year position. Why are you looking for so much trouble?
Yes. I mean, it is, when I originally...
I don't really mean that.
I know. But
it's really a challenge, though.
It is a challenge. I mean, back when I first ran, and it's the last time I was on your show, back in 2005, one of our current trustees, Kathy Wong, who had to resign because of too much time taken away to work on the Chinese charter school. She said, "Oh, all you have to do is love the library." And yeah, that's important, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more. It's a lot more than meeting just once a month and et cetera. But I mean, one of the things is, I think 3 years, you only just really start to understand what's going on after 3 years. 3 years is kind of like the apprenticeship, and after 3 years, at least you've gone through a few rounds, and now you kind of actually get to see all the picture and understand all the details and all that.
And what does the picture look like in these days of limited resources?
Yeah, well, that's the downside to this time. Yes, we've been looking at, I mean, town-wide, I believe, basically 4 consecutive years of lower state funding. I mean, the budget picture is not great. It's not as terrible as it has appeared at times, but still, we're looking essentially at cutting library services and such for at least the 3rd year in a row. It would be nice to be a trustee in a more fun time, but it's important. In some ways, it's more important in times like this to try to figure out what your priorities are, to look at the long-range plans, to develop the long-range plans, to know what is really the most important things for the library. And that's something I've always been interested in doing, trying to work out, not just looking at the immediate needs or the immediate, this year we're facing this much of a cut. And well, okay, we could make it up for it by doing certain things, but next year we're looking at even a deeper cut. We really need to look at a broad picture. What is our long-range goal? What is our long-range plan? What's going to be happening, both in terms of good things like new technologies, all these audiobooks you can just download off the internet and even have to come into the library. That's becoming more and more important. And the bad things that we really can't count on state aid going up again, till who knows when.
What would you point to as maybe the 3 most important things that a Board of Trustee member can do during their reign?
Okay. Well, I would say the most important thing, and something that we probably as a board have not done so well in the past, is fundraising, getting money for the library. We've perhaps rested too much on just the reputation of the library and such, and have not been willing to go out and, make a name for ourselves, be boosters for the library of the general public. So I think that is something that is very important. I think being a knowledgeable person about what the needs of the library are at the high level, trying to get a good sense of what's important to the public. As you may know, there have been various surveys, and there was the whole long-range plan for the town, which has given some feedback, fortunately, in terms of what people like, in terms of hours, materials, et cetera. So that's a good time right now.
And that's in place now. People go to the webpage and look at the goals of the library.
So that's a good thing about coming in as a trustee right now, or being a trustee right now, that we actually have rather more guidance at that point.
Okay, so this has recently evolved.
Yes, yes. I mean, there, obviously, the library's been around for
you
decades.
Didn't start from scratch,
right.
But and what's the third thing?
The third thing, I would say to make sure that you've got excellent staff and to trust your staff. I mean, pushing them, because obviously, your staff has their own interests, but to be willing to listen to the staff and understand that just because your goals are to do X, the library has been facing cuts for so long, there just may not be any resources. You have to be flexible. You have to understand the public wants something, the staff needs something. You have perhaps even a third goal, and you really have to try to put all those together and come up with something that even if everybody's not happy, at least they can say, yeah, well, we can understand why you had to do this, cut here, cut there, etc.
So you're saying in effect that it's a partnership.
It's definitely a partnership.
And in terms of managing the day-to-day affairs, that's based on what you earlier described as the goals or the plan.
Right, right.
And which you have in place now.
Right.
Which was built on the past.
I don't want to claim that it is, a static document or it has all the details we really want, but we have some idea.
It's what you got to work with.
That's what we got to work with, right? Yes.
And I'm sure you're going to continue working. It's a sort of a work in progress.
Yes.
And I guess hiring a permanent director stands, let's say, point 4, if you haven't mentioned that.
Right. I didn't mention it specifically. I mean, that's obviously something that is, hopefully going to be over in a relatively short time, and then they'll be working with a new director. Yeah. So it's not something you would necessarily hope to be doing a lot as a trustee, but no, that is clearly a very important thing right now. Yes.
But that's still ahead of you.
That's still ahead of us. We've formed a search committee, which includes some members from the Friends of the Jones Library, which is a private organization. People may not be familiar with it, or the details. I'm sure you are, but and some staff members, some outside public. There may be a few other people, and they're essentially getting the ball rolling. They've been looking at what would be appropriate to put in job descriptions when you're advertising, what would be appropriate to for ads at various levels, to the trade publications and locally. And then we hope that relatively soon we'll start to hear back from some people, and they will be working on interviewing them and such.
So where are you in the process?
I would say we're not quite as far along as I would have liked, but this has happened during the budget season, which is a very difficult time. Right. You're familiar with town meetings.
But have you sent out
no.
Advertised?
No. We're at the point right now where we just had a trustees meeting last week. They are, as I understand it, the search committee has come up with a proposed job description for what the director would like, and it has enough modifications that it has to be approved by the town HR department, personnel department. So we're at the point where we're getting, and it's actually in the hands of the search committee, so I'm not directly involved with this. I'm not on the search committee. But we're getting to the point where we're ready to actually put out an ad. We had hoped to have an acting director, a permanent director in place at the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st. That was a fairly aggressive target, and it's clear that's not going to happen. We're still hoping, I mean, personally, I'm still hoping, by the end of the year or early next year, we might be able to hire someone. Generally, people said this is an academic community. September 1st is a really good time for people to move in. They finish with one thing or another. So that's my mental target. It's probably still optimistic, but we'll see.
Well, fortunately, you have a pretty good acting director who's working very hard, and I hope to have her on the show. And when she has the time, she is working, getting acquainted, and it's a tremendous responsibility.
It is. When you've had a director who's been around for 30 years, there's just so much institutional knowledge, and so much is just in the person's head to have to come into a position like this. And we actually have an acting director, as you may know, and we have 3 other people that are temporarily have a somewhat bump in grade and salaried. So we have a 4-person team in essence that are essentially. She is the acting director, so she is the the person who has the authorities, yes and no. But she has 3 other people, a person who helps with capital and building issues. I forgot exactly how they broke all the details down. So essentially there's a 4-person team, and they're all doing really well. And poor Tevis Kimball, our head of special collections, is the acting director at the moment, and she's actually been worked herself sick, I think, at the moment. She's out with a cold and was not at a meeting that we had yesterday or earlier today. So, but yeah, very good person.
So that the staff is pretty much intact, but you've changed the leadership direction because of the need for
yes, we've had
new look.
we've had 2 people who've left the area, in addition to Bonnie Isman, our long-term director, who retired. We had the head of adult services and the head of the reference section. Both of them have gone to different parts of the country. So most of the staff has been in place for a fairly long time. But we have hired a new person to come in for the head of the reference, Matt, and I apologize, I don't know whether it's Barubi or Barub. I've heard people say it both ways, and I can't remember how he pronounces it. But we've hired a new person to be head of reference, and he has been a fantastic job. It's really kind of nice to have someone come in from the outside. He'd been on the West Coast. He had been in Cambridge, so he'd worked in a city. He was out on the West Coast working on smaller things, and he's got this perspective he can bring to all of us about how to do things. It's very nice to have a new person in and get that feedback.
You know, Chris, we're looking at a new constituency in the schools. There have been significant changes. There are over 40 kids with 42 different languages. How has that impacted, and how have you arrived or rise to the occasion and challenge?
That's a good question. I don't know of anything, I can't think of anything specifically done for the young children at that age. We do have a program which is sponsored by the Friends of the Jones, Every Child a Reader. All the 2nd graders are brought in. They are given a tour of the library. They are read a story. They each get to take home a book, which is donated, I believe, by Amherst Books. I apologize if I've gotten that wrong. So we have this program that's been going on for many years, so we try to bring 2nd graders in, and obviously they're all the 2nd graders, so they're of all backgrounds and ability to speak English and etc. And they get introduced to the library and such. Again, specific programs I'm not so familiar with. I know we're definitely looking at teens. I mean, teens is a real issue that they don't really have a good place to go. They like to hang out at the library. They perhaps like to hang out too much in terms of just gossiping than, in terms and what other people in the library may want. And we're definitely looking at some grants and programs and what we can do to try to address that. I know people have done a little research into it. Part of the problem is you're never quite sure. People may say they want to do something, but when you actually, the staff have told us this, you actually put all your effort into getting this program together, and then they don't show up because they didn't really want to do it. They just want to talk.
Well, what are some of the programs that have been developed to reach the unemployed and new Americans?
Well, we definitely have the English as a Second Language program, which is, and it's a somewhat, to my mind, somewhat independent organization, but it comes under the umbrella of the Jones, and the Jones is where it is held and where the volunteers come.
That counts. That counts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
we're paying the rent. So
yes,
it's great to have these additional services.
So that was one of the main things that I'm aware of. That we've always had a strong commitment to that, and we've tried to do as much as we can. And it is very hard, with the budget, to commit to that as much as we wanted to. But that is certainly a program that's been in. Again, specific programs, I'm not as aware of specific programs. I do know that talking with the branch librarians, one of the differences between the various libraries we have the North Amherst, the Munson, South Amherst, and the main library. One of the characteristics of the North Amherst Library, being across from the Survival Center, is that they do a lot of work with the people from the Survival Center who can just come across the street, helping them, looking for jobs and using the internet and just generally providing advice. I mean, that's one of the services that library particularly provides, not necessarily by design, but because that's where they are. But again, it's not necessarily a particular program that has been planned out. It is just a need we recognize has to be there, and the staff who are working there know that they'll be providing that.
Now you have the very active Friends of the Library group.
Yes.
What do they do besides raising some money from time to time? How do you, are they a factor in getting input in terms of ideas for future programs?
Yes. And in fact, one of the problems that we've had over the past year, and one of the things we're all working really hard on, is communications. I mean, there have been a lot of the friends, the staff, the trustees, who have not necessarily talked as much. And we're really working to improve that. I can talk about the Woodbury gift in a separate bit, but let me describe. I mean, what the friends do in general is, yes, they raise money. And usually what happens, quite a bit of what they give comes because a staff person will come to their meeting and say, I would like to have $200 to provide refreshments at a poetry reading. Or we have an opportunity to apply for a certain grant. Would you be willing to contribute $500 to it? And under the grant, we could say the friends have donated this and the trustees have donated that. So a fair amount of it comes directly from the staff or the director. There are particular programs that are not necessarily covered under the budget.
So they are communicating.
Oh yes, yes they are. But we're looking at all around. We're really looking at more informal, more frequent, more less us and them, and more. Let's get together more informally, and let's make sure that it's not just once a month we hear that so and so wants this. What can we do to all get together and talk about these things? And it's very much a work in progress. We don't really know what the answer is, and again, it's budget season, and but this is definitely something that we've all looked at, all of us as trustees. We've realized that communication among ourselves, among other entities, among other town bodies, have not necessarily been as good as they could have been.
And how do you create a process or an opportunity for the public to be part of, either as volunteers or to promote maybe some ideas? This is a great area. People come from all over the world, and libraries exist everywhere. And it seems to me there's a great opportunity to grow from just the membership.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question, actually. My fellow trustee, Sarah McKee, and I, and this new head of reference, Matt Tevis Kimball, the acting director, and a general member of the general public, Fred Luddy. We've been sort of informally forming working on fundraising committees. And it's not just fundraising, but it's the whole, fundraising is the immediate goal, but it's the whole publicity, getting people to know that. And Matt, again, having come in from the outside, and actually I'm as a technical person knowing about computers, I actually attended his interview, to see what he does with websites and all this. And he has some great ideas for the website in terms of advertising to people, here's volunteer opportunities, here's how to give, here's what the friends do. It's an initial step. Also, we have talked about, in fact, you and I talked a little bit about this before the meeting, that we'd like to use ACTV more. It'd be nice, a half hour a month is probably too much to hope for, but we'd like to get more, few minutes slots, more of the slides you show, when nothing is on. We really want to look into trying to get more discussion in there. Some of the ideas, and you had actually mentioned, perhaps reading just some books that have come in, talking about the library.
And programs.
And obviously, programs both in terms of what's coming up, which is obviously important, but also what has happened. I just got a report of, it was basically a staff member report. Here's what happened at the Jones last month, little nice paragraph-sized bullets, and all very, entertaining and cheery. And, okay, it's too late for anyone to do anything about it, but it was really nice to read this. They were so, we have the people who wrote the Rise Up Singing songbook, Peter Blood, and again, I'm sorry. And they've been doing a program on Sundays, I believe, and I'm sorry, 10 o'clock maybe, if anybody's still interested. And they have just exploded. They're like 25 people came the first time, 80 people came the second. We're expecting we have to move them out of the nice room they're in and put them into our dingy little large meeting room because we're expecting so many people to come. And it's just great to read these reports, of what's been happening. And even if it's too late for people to come, it's just great for people to know this. We're we're trying to get more into, this social media, Facebook, maybe Twitter, just let people know, hey, here's what's going on at the library. Isn't this neat?
That's a great idea, and as you know, we train people.
Mm-hmm.
So you had volunteers or people with some experiences with camera and
mm-hmm.
programming. You could actually take that program on Sundays.
We could.
And there's a lot of bad weather. People can't get out for one reason or another. So we welcome you. That's what we're here for. And
Indeed.
I'm going to challenge the board to take advantage of it. Of course, the staff needs a lot of help with that stuff.
Right.
But this is something that volunteers can do, working with the staff and with your program. Maybe we'll have a story hour once a month or once every week or whatever you guys come up with. It's available. We have the time, and this resource is for you.
Thank you, yes. I mean, one of the things we've talked about, and again, budget season is a horrible time to do anything other than concentrate on budgets, but we've talked about getting a staff member or a trustee, trained in the camera usage so we can record our own trustee meetings and make sure, even if they're not broadcast, at least they can be streamed and all that. And I'm hoping we're going to do that, which I think is a useful thing. We're the only elected town body that doesn't have, and I can understand why. I'm not going to, beat on you why. You've got limited resources, and we're in some ways
we're
small.
under contract.
Exactly, you're under contract, and we're not under contract.
And you want to know something?
Yeah.
Despite being under contract, which we fulfill, we do a lot of stuff because we want to bring the community to as many events as possible.
Yep.
And if you press us hard enough and we have the resources, that's doable. I can't make any commitments. I'm only speaking as an individual now.
Right. I think that's good, because I think it's important for the public, even though not always exciting meetings, and actually it's often good when they're not exciting. It's important for the public to be able to see this. And just to mention, I mean, obviously, we had some problems last year, and one of the things that would be useful, if we had these recorded, is people could realize that, briefly, there was an issue over the director's evaluation and the process and all, and who runs the library, and I don't want to get too much into it, but we had a facilitation in November of last year.
I understand. That was very successful.
Excellent. And, Owen Schumann, Groton Public Library, Groton, Massachusetts. I haven't been there, but go over there, donate money. Excellent, excellent. Very successful. We were able to talk frankly. I mean, it was a public meeting, but we still, she brought out the issues. She, discussed, how libraries are intended to work, what the law really means. I mean, as one of my fellow trustees said at a recent meeting, if people who had heard about what was happening 6 months ago could see us now, they wouldn't believe it. I mean, the four of us who are here who've gone through it, I mean, we're obviously we have disagreements, we can, both policy and procedure, but we're generally getting along really well. We understand, we've agreed, on the policies and procedures and changes we need to make. It's, and that is, just to kind of go to the fundraising mode, I do fear that, and we've heard, some people, are upset at the library, and they have not necessarily felt like donating as much. And I want to make it clear that, if you're angry with me, if you're angry with the trustees, you're angry with the former director, angry with the current director, withholding money does not.
Don't take it out on the kids.
Yeah, you're not hurting
or your
us.
Neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. You're hurting the public. We're cutting hours and staff. I'll mention our fundraising goal. We had an aggressive goal of $60,000. At the moment, we're having to count on $20,000, less than that, so $40,000. And that's on top of basically every other source of income, from what we can take out of the endowment, to state funding, to what the town can give us. Everything is going down. Now, that was, again, aggressive, partly because it included a single $10,000 donation, which, but, even if you kind of factor that out, we are definitely lower than what we had. And is it because of the controversy? People have said, people are seeing this issue all around in nonprofits. I don't know. But, the thing I want to say is, again, if you love the library, show that you love the library, donate. If you want to donate to specific programs or whatever, that's great. We'll be able to take collections online when the new web page is done with credit cards. You can do that. I don't want to get too much into the commercial side here, but But yes, again, think about what the library is now. Think about what the library does for you. Listen to what people are saying about the library right now. We're not perfect, but we're all good people of goodwill. And I think the fact that we're working so well together so far, I mean, it says something about
You've grown.
all of us.
You've
We've
all
all grown.
You've all learned.
We've all learned.
You know, it's a tough job.
It is a tough job.
You get more than one person in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to the bathroom every morning and look in the mirror and have a discussion with yourself, you come to a settlement rather quickly, or you just put it aside. But when you go to a board meeting, you can't do that.
And one of the issues we're addressing is, when you get elected, there may be different other boards, but you get elected to the trustees board, you can't just essentially just come in and you start working on things. We don't really have a training procedure like, here's a state trustee handbook, here's the 5-page summary, this is what a trustee does, and et cetera. So it's easy to come into the position thinking, the trustee runs the library, and no, you hire a director who does certain things, and you have a contract with the director, and this is what the job description of the director says. The understanding is when you hire a director, the trustees have handed over some power to them. On the other hand, the director has certain responsibilities to the trustees, to do certain things, to try to do certain things, certain responsibilities to communicate and such. So one of the things we're looking at, and my fellow trustee, Sarah McKee, I have to give her a lot of credit for this. She's been looking at, actually, at Owen Schumann's bylaws for her own library, which is significantly smaller than the Jones, but she's come up with a proposal for restructuring our committees so they're less unwieldy, and also looking at policies.
You could work through the issues before you come before the
and
board.
Also, how are we going to get people, start up and running when they join the board? Make sure that all these things that have been vague or unclear, make sure we get them all written down. Make sure that there's no uncertainty. In the budget committee, we do this. If
Chris,
we're not sure. Yes.
Chris,
yes.
It looks like the board's in good hands.
Yes.
I want to wish you well.
Thank you.
And will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
We have books in the library.
We do indeed.
And this is one of my favorites, Unexpectedly 80 and Other Adaptations by Judith Force. Would you read one or two? I think we have time.
Okay. Let me see. Yes, the first one I wanted to start with here is How to Stay Married. And my wife will appreciate this. And also I like the theme. It was a very, very fortuitous choice based on what we were just talking about. So How to Stay Married. Whenever you try to recount all the hurts, disappointments, betrayals, and grievances that assail you, may your memory fail you. Which I very much believe in. Let's consider where we are now, not how we got here.
And as I've told young people when I did marriage counseling, there are 3 messages for the beginning, middle, and end of a marriage. Don't go to bed angry. Don't go to bed angry. Don't go to bed angry.
Good points.
And then you've got a good start. One more?
One more. We have time, yes. And this is called, I Don't Intend to Gently Fade Away. I don't intend to gently fade away, though actuaries warn of coming night. There's still a tune or two I'd like to play. A ripened cheese and a glass of Chardonnay continue to beguile my appetite. I don't intend to gently fade away. His hand on my bare shoulder can allay the fear that passion's finally taken flight. There's still a tune or two I'd like to play. A grandchild's poem or masterpiece in clay has not yet ceased to fill me with delight. I don't intend to gently fade away. The world has much against which to inveigh, but it remains beloved in my sight. There's still a tune or two I'd like to play. I hope to see another spring's array, another autumn's slanted golden light. I don't intend to gently fade away. There's still a tune or two I'd like to play.
So if you want a book that you can read in a half hour and come away feeling real good, especially before bedtime, Unexpectedly 80 is a must. I just got it for my 85th birthday. It's not too late. Chris, it's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure talking with you again.
And say hello to the board.
Will do. Will do.
And that's it for Conversations. I'm Isaac BenEzra, host and co-producer. And this winds up the series with the 3 candidates for the Jones Library Board of Trustees. Because we have not a primary. I keep saying primary. It's the actual election on March 29th at something, I think between 7 and 8 p.m., 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Look forward to seeing you next week. Good night now.